If you're looking at Instagram, the feed is sort of like the final movie. It's the final production. So if you have a photo on your feed, usually it's a bit more edited. Sometimes it's a bit more staged. It's a bit more professional. Whereas the stories are the behind the scenes, raw, uncut footage that people want to see leading up to the movie, but don't get a chance to do so. So for me, I don't have a set schedule where I say, I'm going to record 5 Instagram stories today. What I do is every time I'm doing something or I have a thought that comes to my mind, I make that. So it's very raw and authentic because it's not curated. I'm not saying I'm going to go out, to this location and record a story today. If anything happens, I document it. And stories are the best way to do that.
Hey, Atime, welcome to Echo Interviews. Today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Mike Sherrard. He is an engineer turned realtor who has absolutely made a splash in the social media world as a real estate professional. He was named a top 30 influencer in the real estate industry within his first year. So he's clearly doing some things amazingly right. Mike is going to share a ton of valuable information on Instagram, on Facebook, LinkedIn, and other platforms. It was an absolute pleasure sitting down and discussing these platforms with him because he provided a ton of actionable information that you can implement in your business today. And of course, I had to ask him my favorite question, what he would do if he had to start all over again today. Let's begin. Welcome back, everybody, to Echo Interviews. Today we have a very special guest for you, Mike Sherrard. If you're looking for somebody to help with branding, with social media, and just leveling up your online presence, this is somebody that you need to be following. Mike, welcome, and thank you so much for being here.
Hey, man, thanks so much. I appreciate the intro, and I'm equally as excited to be here. So I'm excited to share some knowledge and help these guys out.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, we're going to jump right into it. Mike, tell us a little bit about yourself, the industry that you're in, and how you got started.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm in the real estate industry. I'm up here in Calgary, Alberta, in the northern neighbors of Canada. And, a few years ago, I got started in real estate back January 1st. In 2017, I started full-time in April 1st of 2017. And leading up to that, I was an engineer. And, I took 2 degrees in 3 years at university, and I was doing quite well as an engineer. I was identified as the top employee of 60,000 in my very first year as an engineer. And they sat down with me and put me on this accelerator route and said, Mike, you're pegged as an up-and-coming employee. We see potential in you. Where would you like to go in the company? And because I like dealing with people and thinking and ambition, I said, well, I'd like to get into oil and gas sales. And they said, great. The quickest way we can get you there is 7 years technical experience, and that will be your route. And 2 weeks later, I put in my 2 weeks notice and I quit. Around that same period of time of getting notified or getting mentioned as one of the top employees as an engineer, I was buying my own house. And when buying a house, I started realizing 2 different things. One, the quality of a lot of agents up here wasn't that good in terms of the experience they were providing people. A lot of agents had a lot of experience, but a lot of agents were providing a great experience to their clients. And that was common amongst all my friends that have recently bought too. On the other side of things, after watching videos of a lot of the top agents down in the States, I realized that a lot of you guys were leveraging social media. And not one single agent up here was leveraging social media. Neither was I. I didn't even have an Instagram account, but I saw that it was relevant and important. So I realized, one of my passions was always real estate. Engineering certainly wasn't going to get me to where I want to go. So I got my license and went all in, and that's how I got into real estate.
Wow. Okay. That's an interesting journey. So you have a trend of getting rising up rather quickly and getting after it in pretty much in the industry that you're in. So that engineering, that frames it a lot better for me. So you jumped into real estate, and what was it about the experience? I know that there's differences between the Canada market and the United States market, but what type of experience, what was so off-putting about the experience that you had as you were purchasing your home?
Yeah, definitely. Well, two different things really stood out for me. One was on possession. And for me, I was 22 years old when I bought my first house. And, it's a big move. It's something you've been looking forward to for so long. It's a big, financial investment. And on possession day, when you've got all these emotions and you're excited and it's a big moment, I walked into the house. One of the two agents was there. They handed me the keys. All the lights were off, completely dark house. No gift, no nothing, never heard from them again. They walked away, boom, bang, done. So that was kind of not so exciting way to end the experience. And then on the other side of things, even when going to buy the house, I knew what sort of property I wanted, but they were trying to push me in a different direction, not listening to me. And I find there's a lot of people that think they know what's best for the client, but while that may be true in some cases, sometimes clients have their own quirky interests as well, right? Like, for example, I was working with a friend of mine and they wanted a house that had creaky flooring because it reminded them of back home when they grew up. What's it for me to say, no, you should be in a house that sounds like it's going to fall apart? That was something they loved. And for me to tell them that that's not right is not right on my part. And that's the experience that I got when I was buying my own house, is I was telling them exactly what I wanted and they were telling me otherwise. And that didn't bode well right with me. So from there, I got into the industry, leveraged door knocking and social media to scale quite quickly. And there we go.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So let's transition on to the social media aspect. Of course, we have the big players, the Instagram, the Facebooks, the Twitters, and everything like that. Where are you most focused on right now?
Definitely. So it depends ultimately on what you're talking about. So building my personal brand, Instagram all the way. Instagram is the way that I built my personal brand, and it's a great way for me to stay connected. It's also been a great organic lead generation source for me. In terms of actively generating leads, Facebook is king. Even despite all of the adjustments with the algorithm and the privacy rules in the housing sector, it's still one of the best ways to generate leads if you're using it effectively. And then in terms of tying it all together, I find YouTube's a great platform. So I built my business entirely on Facebook and Instagram. And then once I built that momentum, YouTube came into the picture. But, it's one of the things that we should even mention here is that find out what does work for you, because I find a lot of people are trying to crush it on Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and they become overwhelmed and they start becoming very mediocre at all platforms instead of great at a couple of them. So I found out what was getting the best results for me and what I actually enjoyed doing, similar to identifying what prospecting methods you should use. And then I went all in on those. So for me, it's been Instagram and Facebook.
Awesome. Awesome. I don't appreciate the personal dig of calling me mediocre on all the platforms.
Never, man, never.
Pinterest, side note, I probably shouldn't bring this up. Pinterest, it's tough. It's tough for me. And I don't know why. I've been relatively successful in other platforms, but Pinterest is just a tough one for me. But let's talk about Instagram a little bit more, because that's something that more and more agents are starting to wake up to and trying to, start in some capacity. You started fairly recently on Instagram. As you mentioned, you didn't even have an account prior to it. So how did you learn the ropes? How were you educating yourself? Did you have a mentor? How did you get into not real estate. How did you get your Instagram growing so rapidly? Because now you're almost at 20,000 followers. Is that right?
Yeah, it's getting up there. For me, even back in early 2017, I wasn't finding too many people, even not just in Calgary, but across North America, that were using Instagram in a way that I wanted to emulate. There were some people that were doing quite well, but it wasn't anything that I found was scalable or something that I could replicate, because largely the people that were doing well were, TV stars on $1 Million Listing. They had this foundation, it was easier for them because they had hundreds of thousands of people wanting to find out more about their lives. So what I started doing as a brand new agent is, after identifying that something like Instagram was important in terms of staying relevant, building your brand, building up local awareness, and becoming top of mind, I started looking at entrepreneurs in different industries. So I started looking at people like the Gary Vaynerchuk's, the Ed Milet's, Andy Frizellas, who are now both my coaches, Gerard Adams, Tom Bilyeu. I started looking at how they were building their personal brands. I started looking at people that were successful in other industries and finding a way to relate that to real estate. And I find that's why I maybe did quite well early on, but why most people struggle, because you look at a lot of real estate agents' Instagram accounts and it looks like a home and land magazine. It's just properties, just listed, just sold, open house, coming soon. And nobody has ever looked at a picture of a house and said, damn, I'd love to work with the agent that's behind that listing. They don't know you, right? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But when you look at the top personal brands out there, people do the opposite. They say, damn, I like this person. I would love to work with them in whatever business they're doing. So that's sort of the approach that I took, is I started taking the 80-20 rule and I flipped it on its head, where I did 80% of my content was personal, but with a real estate twist, and 20% was real estate specific. So that 80% still was real estate related, but it had my face in it. So whether I be at an open house, it wasn't just a picture of the property with a big open house banner saying, hey, come check me out. It was me actually inside or outside the house saying, hey, I'm here, now come check me out. And that way people started becoming familiar with my face by using things like Instagram stories, which is one of the most powerful in terms of building your brand. People got to know my true personality. And that's how things really started getting rolling, is being really broad, right? And at the end of the day, the three things that I say you need in order to build a strong Instagram is authenticity, transparency, and vulnerability, right? Giving people a very raw insight as to what you do in real estate. And a lot of people struggle with that. So those three things are king in terms of building a strong connection with people in the like, know, and trust factor.
Well, Mike, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. I'm here writing things, just trying to keep up. Okay, well, you mentioned stories. So if I was a new agent trying to break into the Instagram, I'm not going to say market, but trying to break into Instagram, how many stories am I posting per day? Because to my understanding, stories are 24 hours in length, right? So you can either do video or you can do images. Are you just story after story after story every single day? How often are you posting?
Yeah, so here's one good way to look at it. If you're looking at Instagram, the feed is sort of like the final movie. It's the final production. So if you have a photo on your feed, usually it's a bit more edited. Sometimes it's a bit more staged. It's a bit more professional. Whereas the stories are the behind the scenes, raw, uncut footage that people want to see leading up to the movie, but don't get a chance to do so. So for me, I don't have a set schedule where I say, I'm going to record 5 Instagram stories today. What I do is every time I'm doing something or I have a thought that comes to my mind, I make that. So it's very raw and authentic because it's not curated. I'm not saying I'm going to go out to this location and record a story today. If anything happens, I document it. And stories are the best way to do that because they do only last 24 hours unless you add them to your highlight. But it's a great way to maintain engagement. And again, the good thing about stories versus photos is if you look at a photo, you don't know that person. You can, ultimately in order to build a personal brand and to build a connection with somebody, you need 3 factors, which is like, know, and trust. Sometimes somebody is going to see your photo and say, damn, I like that photo. I like what they talk about in the description. They look good. It resonates with me. I'm going to follow them. That's getting them to like you. They're going to get to know you by starting to become familiar with your consistent posts. So consistency is a factor. But the only way they're going to get to trust you is by actually getting to know your true personality, and that comes by video, and that comes by unedited raw video, right? Because a lot of the times, some people could look at me and look at the purple BMW and say, this guy's just some egomaniac, look at his stupid car, what is he doing? But if they get to know my stories and see that I actually deeply care and that, I do go above and beyond in terms of the quality that I provide, that might give them a different factor in terms of getting to trust me. So in terms of using stories, it's all about just documenting your journey whenever anything happens, right? You look at all these vloggers and they become successful because they catch things in the moment. You're doing the exact same on Instagram by using stories. It's just documenting your life in the moment.
That's awesome. That's a great illustration. The raw behind the scenes type footage for stories, and then the final film. It's a great illustration. I'm gonna credit you with that 3 times, and then I'm just gonna pretend I came up with it.
I'm good with that.
Okay, so on the stories, I've always been curious. Do I need to be hashtagging? Do I need to be tagging people, or do I just need to put something witty with the GIF? What's a good formula for that?
Yeah, definitely. So that's a great question, honestly. Geotagging is always super important. So tagging the location is great, especially if you're tagging a location that's highly searched, but not too broadly searched. Like, for example, if I geotag Calgary's got 1.1 million people in it. So oftentimes your story might not be seen by people just searching for Calgary. However, if you go to one of the most popular coffee shops in Calgary and tag that, you're much more likely to be seen because it's a bit more niche, but there's also still a good search criteria there. So geotagging is important. I love to hashtag as well, but hashtagging relevant aspects of your story. And otherwise, the things that, for me, that engage the most, again, are just raw in the moment. For me, it's being authentic and vulnerable. So a lot of the times, my most vulnerable stories are the ones that convert the best. My story that converted the best still to this day was me about 20-25 minutes before going into a luxury listing presentation. I was going into a listing presentation for a $4.5 million property against the #1 luxury agent in my city. So this was a 1.5 years ago. So I was about 10 months into real estate, going up against the top dog. And I sat outside just down the street from the property, and I made an Instagram story basically telling people, listen, I'm going up against this agent. I'm the underdog. I probably won't get the listing. Here's my angle. Here's what I'm going to try and do in order to win the listing. I'll let you guys know how it goes, whether it be good, bad, or ugly. I ended up winning the listing, but the reason why it went so well is because I told them beforehand. If I told them after, hey, I was the underdog, I went in and crushed it, that's different. But because I was opening up to the audience and saying, listen, I'm being real here. Even though I'm confident, I'm miles behind this guy in terms of credibility and track record. So let's give it a shot. And so those vulnerable, very open, honest, and authentic stories are what really resonates well with other people.
That is such a great illustration. That's a great example because, as you're telling that story, it got me thinking, well, did you get it?
Yeah.
Even just you retelling it right now. And as you say, had you told them after the fact, oh, okay, there's a win, that I'm not saying that this is how it could be seen, but this is how it could be seen. Well, now you're bragging. Yeah, you won it. Great. You showed us, you told us about the win, but you didn't tell us about all the other losses that you had. So it's real drama unfolding, and people get engaged into that story. So storytelling is super important across all platforms, and it's pretty cool that you're able to do that through stories. Well, not only on Instagram but on Facebook. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that is awesome. Going over a little bit to Facebook, and then we'll come back to Instagram. Do the stories on Facebook, are they pretty much the same? Or is there anything different that you can think of?
So for me, I cross-post both, but Facebook doesn't get any engagement for me. At the end of the day, again, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram have vastly different demographics, and not a lot of people understand that. And a lot of people will take the same post and description from Instagram and they'll post the same thing on Facebook, and they'll post the same thing on LinkedIn. But what they don't understand is that there's 3 different tonalities you need to use. There's 3 different demographics that are looking at that. So cross-pollinating it in that way may have worked a couple of years ago, but people now don't want, oftentimes if you've got dedicated followers, they're following you on all 3. So for them to see the same thing 3 times, like, what the heck is going on? I want something different. So with stories, that's the only thing that I just published, just to have some sort of Facebook story. But I find they don't work that well. So ultimately, I use Facebook for different types of content, and I try and make sure that every time I'm posting on a platform, it's got a completely different description and a different photo or video.
Awesome. No, so thank you. That people don't, myself included, don't necessarily know that the audiences are different. Maybe we did know, but we certainly weren't changing any of our behavior to accommodate for that audience. I know I'm guilty, because if you follow me on Facebook or friends with me on Facebook, you're gonna see the same story on Instagram. So I'll make sure I'll adjust accordingly. So that's awesome.
Definitely.
All right, well, with Instagram, you mentioned that, there's some organic business, and I know that my audience would love to be not only being super, super successful in Instagram, but also translate into listings, translate into buyers, ultimately translate into a larger bank account. So are there posts that will elicit some response, some actions from potential home buyers or home sellers, investors, or anybody in the real estate space? Or do you specifically post certain type of content expecting that response?
Yeah, definitely. So, now that I'm, about to launch one of my own agencies, I'm not posting too much real estate content anymore as I start to phase out of direct buying and selling. But as I started getting rolling, there were very specific posts that did exceptionally well. So one of them is, when I first got started, I wanted to have something as a prop. So what I did is I went out and I had a 5-foot wide and I believe 2-foot tall sold sign made. And with the O was a big smiley face. And it was branded in my color. So 5 feet wide. It was the biggest that I could fit in the trunk of my car, with all the seats folded down, everything. And what I did is every time somebody was either taking possession or selling their property on the final day, I would get them, the homeowners, to hold the sign up in front of their house. And it's massive, so it's incredibly hard to miss. And that resonated really well, because it was always a time where they were filled with emotions. They were smiling, they were laughing. They loved holding the big sign up because they were proud of getting the job done. For those who don't know watching this, we're in a 5-year recession. So the market here is terrible beyond belief, right? When I got into real estate, on average, only 27% of listed homes sell in my city. So 73% of homes that get listed never sell. And of that 27% of listed homes that sell, they expire or terminate at least once before getting sold. The market up here is terrible. So for people to actually get the job done, they were extremely happy. So by able to take a picture with this big sold sign, that really resonated with them. And I was able to, in turn, use those same photos and run Facebook ads with them in order to drive traffic. Now, one of the other things that I did really well was I would actually do raw reaction videos. So on times where I knew that there was a tight deal, or that I knew emotions were high, or I knew that it might not come together, but if it did, it was going to be absolutely epic, I would actually record the phone call of me calling the client and letting them know we got the deal accepted or we got the conditions waived. And by that, again, giving such a raw emotional experience, sharing that with people, that went over extremely well, because it showed how happy the client was in the moment. If you go back and ask a client for a testimonial in a month after it closes, they're done with the experience. Yeah, they're going to say a couple good things about you, and it is what it is. But there's nothing like catching raw emotions in the moment. So that's what I tried to do. And those photos and videos are what really resonated with people and drew people to my Instagram and Facebook platforms in order to find out more.
Whoa, that's super cool. That is super cool. And I'm glad that you bring up the closings. I'm really, because you brought it up at the beginning, and with it being a bad experience as you were going through it. And it sounds like not only did that impact you, but I can tell just by that story, and I'm sure there's other things that you do, you make closings a celebratory event. It's not we're at the title company, thanks, bye. It's beyond that. So that's super cool. That I'm glad that you're doing that for your clients, because a lot of people, sometimes I'll admit some of my closings are pretty dry. So I will put my own self on blast there. Well, we are getting towards the end of 2020, and people are starting to formulate their, did I say 2020? 2019, and starting on the 2020 plan. If somebody that's either has no social media following or has some social media following but just wants to double down, where should their 2020 focus be on? What platform are you looking at? What's interesting you? What interests you for 2020 in any particular platform?
Definitely. So we'll start with Instagram, and then maybe we'll touch on LinkedIn for a second. And then, also just going back to what you said about the closings, one of the things that I used to do with closings for my clients is I used to do a full wine and charcuterie night with a sommelier. So I used to bring a sommelier into their house for 12 to 14 of their friends with charcuterie and have a full evening with free wine, free meat, everything cheese for my clients. And again, what I did for that is I always brought my photographer and videographer to capture that experience. And that turned into some of my best social media content, because it, again, highlighted what I was doing above and beyond the rest of my clients, but it was also becoming a shareable piece of content that had more people that were involved in the emotional experience because it had their friends. So just getting creative with different things and trying to make sure that people don't just forget you at the end of it, that you make a lasting impression on them, not just them, but also their friends and family. Now, going into 2020, Instagram is doing some really interesting stuff. I don't know if it's good, I don't know if it's bad, but they're starting to adjust their algorithm in terms of not getting as much exposure, not showing the number of likes on a photo, different things like that. And a lot of people are getting scared about that, saying, well, is the reach dying? Is it still a relevant platform? Can I still get great results? And I think it is. I think it's one of the best platforms because it's very visual, and we are in a very visual industry, right? People love seeing sexy homes. They love seeing foreclosures. They love seeing quirky features of homes. They love seeing unique things. There's so many things that lend itself strongly to Instagram in our industry. Now, one of the good things that I'm going to say about what you can look forward to in terms of 2020 is the fact that they are removing likes. And a lot of people are going to say, well, is that going to affect my photos? What removing likes does is it makes you care less about the optics and makes you care more about putting out content, right? A lot of people, even just 6 months ago, if they posted a photo that normally gets 500 likes and suddenly on this photo they got 97, they're going to be all stressed out about what didn't go well, why didn't people like it, I'm not posting something like that again. And it started taking away from their natural, authentic self because they were only posting content that they thought other people would like. But by removing the like count, it's giving people an opportunity to now share what's true to them without having to worry constantly about the perception of others in terms of vanity metrics like likes and shares and stuff like that. So I think that's a really good aspect of it. And again, there's no better time to build your personal brand because as time goes on, what you're going to see, especially if you go into a recession like myself, the ones who win are the ones who are top of mind. And the ones who are top of mind are the ones that are relevant and are on the platforms that are garnering the most amount of attention. And in 2019, going into 2020, that is Instagram. Now let's talk about LinkedIn for a second because that's another golden nugget that not a lot of people are paying attention to. LinkedIn right now has on average 10x the organic engagement and reach that Facebook does. So LinkedIn right now is becoming almost like if Facebook was back in 2012 before they started removing the reach and making it more personal and less salesy. So LinkedIn is another great platform, but again, making sure that you're tailoring it to that audience. I swear in my Instagram posts, I am very raw and savage in them. I am not like that on LinkedIn. I have the same message, but my tonality is different because it's much more of a professional online platform. You know, it's not a job search platform, it's a networking platform. And the bigger your network, the bigger your net worth, as the age-old saying goes. So I hope a lot of people are going to start diving into LinkedIn because, again, the reach right now is amazing. It's not as saturated as Instagram or Facebook, and it's a great way to build connections because ultimately business owners and other professionals are usually the most connected people out there, right? So if you can build solid connections with one of them, usually they've got a network of many to tap into. So you're going one to many instead of one to one.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. So LinkedIn, I'm glad you brought that up because here recently, and I even applied for it, they have that live feature. So it just seems, to your point, it just seems that they're adopting similar functionalities that you saw on Facebook and then on Instagram. You're starting to see that over in LinkedIn. I mean, very recently, you couldn't even do video. So now the fact that you can do video live, that's a game changer. So I just actually applied for that last week. So hopefully I get approved for the, I guess it's their beta or whatever it's called. But it's interesting that you bring that up. What type of content are you posting? Are you posting natively some videos? Are you posting images, hashtagging? What does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple things that I'm posting. One is anything interesting about your city or your industry. So any updates, if you're subscribed to Inman News, that's a great platform where you can share and whether it be updates about Amazon partnering with Realogy or anything like that. That's industry news that people are curious about. So sharing that on your profile and writing your 2 cents on that article is really powerful. Also sharing things that are local to your city. So people are always curious about, any new city updates, any new expansions, any new developments, anything like that. That's another really incredibly powerful resource to be sharing. In terms of my own content, I oftentimes share sort of thought-provoking and inspirational content. So I share content that is real life. It's stuff that I'm going through. It's my perspective on things. But I do it in a way that's thought-provoking so that other people can write their personal opinion on whatever I posted. And then the final thing is natively uploading some video. So I only natively upload a video if it's a value add to the community. So I'm not going to post a YouTube video on LinkedIn. If I do a market update, if I do a business highlight, if I highlight some new landmark in my city, that's something that I would post. But it's only if it's a value add to the consumer and not some sort of sales pitch.
Awesome. Mike, we could take this forever. I have a list of questions right in front of me that I haven't even gotten to. So I think I'll end it with my favorite question. And in this channel, I like to pride myself that it's an action-based channel. Anything that comes on here, and you've been a great illustration of it, we're focused on content that people can actually act upon. So after they hit that subscribe button and turn on that notification bell, they can actually have something to show for it. Go out and do something on Instagram, go out and do something on YouTube, Facebook, Google, whatever the content is. So my question to you is, if you had to start all over again today as a new agent, knowing what you know now, what does your 7 days look like? What do your next 7 days look like if you had to start all over again today?
That's an amazing question, and definitely a big one. So let me break it down like this. Social media as a brand new agent is really important, but what people need to understand is 2 different things. One, you need to use it as a tool, not a toy. A lot of people use it as a toy where they're endlessly scrolling or checking out other people. To be completely honest, and sorry if anybody watching this follows me, I don't watch one single person's stories on my Instagram. I don't care who you are, family, friends, relationships. I don't watch any of your stories. I post mine, but I use it as a tactical tool for business. I post with intent. I post in order to build my personal brand. The second thing you need to know is it's not going to provide you any immediate ROI unless you're using Facebook ads. And even then, there's usually a long life cycle to the point of close. So what does my next 7 days look like? My priorities is prospecting. And in terms of that, I'm going to go out between 11 and 1 and 6 and 8 p.m. And I'm going to door knock 100 doors each time. I like to door knock. Door knocking works for me. I hate cold calling. I won't cold call. It doesn't, I find I can build a better relationship with somebody when I'm in front of them. So prospecting is going to be one of my fundamental aspects of generating business. In the afternoon and the late evening, that's when I'm going to start doing marketing. In the afternoon, I like to do my Facebook marketing. So I like to do things that are, generating income over time as the clock goes around. And then I always like to have a morning routine. So my morning routine is I get up at 4 a.m. every day. After I get up, I like to go to the gym. And then I like to sit down and I like to methodically plan my day. So from start to finish, you'll be wake up, gym, I plan my day, prospect, market, prospect. And then in the late evening, after you've done everything, start worrying about your content. So make sure as a brand new agent that you do take time to create content, but you don't let it take away from dollar value added activities like your prospecting. A lot of people get caught up with a shiny penny and they like to do what they enjoy, not doing what they have to. And social media is something people often enjoy. Same with marketing. Prospecting is something you have to do. Now, one thing, the only day that I had different than every other day was Sundays. And on Sundays, what I would do is I would batch my video content. So on Sundays, I would take the day off, and instead of prospecting or instead of doing any client-related stuff, I would go out and I would record all my videos for the week and do any necessary photo shoots. So that way I got all my content done for the week in one single day. It's spread out and ready to go. Lastly, the final thing that I started doing after about 6 months into real estate that clients loved was I actually started taking Mondays off of doing prospecting and general business. And I started using Mondays to do full, thorough, detailed client updates. So for any listings that I had, I've never yet had a client ask me, Mike, what is the feedback? How is the listing going? What do we have to do next? Because every Monday, I take the day and I give people a thorough update on the feedback, open house status, market updates, everything, so that they know exactly the status of their house. And I find by doing that, they're kept in the loop. They know I'm diligently and actively on top of it, and they don't have to worry about how their property is. So Monday and Sundays are the only 2 days that were a bit different. Otherwise, I was in full prospecting mode, and any free time that I had was spent testing out Facebook ads.
Mike, there's nothing I can add to that. That's a great plan. And, actually, that is the most detailed plan that we've had on the show today. So congratulations. You won the question. No, if you have a mic around, go ahead and drop it, because that just happened.
There we go.
Hey, Mike, where can people connect with you?
Yeah, man, I'm pretty easy to find. So, Instagram and YouTube are my two fundamental platforms right now. I also have a Facebook group that I like to invite people in where we just engage with each other's content. And for anybody, I created this Facebook group for people that are new and trying video or photo content and want honest, transparent feedback before they share it with the public. So I can send you that link if you want to drop it in the description, but that's just Absolutely. An open group where people can share their content and get people's opinions. Otherwise, my Instagram is Mike_Sherrard and my YouTube channel is Mike Sherrard. So check me out. Feel free to reach out anytime. I'm always happy to help any way I can.
Perfect. Everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Echo Interviews. Go and check out Mike Sherrard. He is an absolute legend, and we'll catch you on the next one.